Welcome to Figure Eight, where we feature inspiring stories of women entrepreneurs who have grown their businesses to 7 and 8 figures revenue. If you're in the mix of growing a bigger business, these stories are for you. Join us as we explore where the tough spots are, how to overcome them, and how to prepare yourself for the next portion of the climb. I'm your host, Julie Ellis. I'm an author, entrepreneur, and a growth and leadership coach who co-founded, grew, and exited an 8-figure business. This led me to exploring why some women achieve great things. And that led to my book, Big Gorgeous Goals. Let's explore the systems, processes, and people that help us grow our businesses to new heights. If you're interested in growing your business, this podcast will help. Now, let's get going. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Figure Eight. Today, I am in conversation with Tara Milburn. Tara is the founder of Ethical Swag, and I think we all know about the great things we tend to get out there in the world from companies, and she is putting a new spin on this. I'm curious to talk to her today about how she came up with the idea for her company and how she left her very successful corporate career with some amazing highlights to build this venture. She believes that business has created a lot of the challenges that we face globally, and she wants to play an active role in fixing it. So, Ethical Swag is her way of demonstrating how we can solve problems in business and create a better world and provide great swag that aligns with client values while having a lot of fun doing it. So, welcome, Tara. It's so great to talk with you.
Thanks so much, Julie.
Yeah. So I'm really curious about how, you had some pretty nice corporate career highlights when I read your bio with being involved in, having the Olympics come to Canada, the NBA come to Canada. Like, those are some pretty great corporate highlights. How did you decide you would leave all of that and become an entrepreneur?
Well, geez, yeah, that's years ago now, and I left it honestly for balance. I absolutely loved what I was doing. I loved who I was doing it with, but we started our family, and the sports and entertainment industry and family back when I was, before family, I'd get to work at 7 in the morning, and sometimes I wouldn't get home till midnight because you'd sort of come out of your office and go into, a suite and see a concert or a hockey game or a basketball game or something like that. And my goodness, it was a lot of fun. But you can only do so much when you've got a young family. So I left that when our family started, really. So that's when that started. But I've just been very fortunate in my career to work with amazing people and with really exciting projects. It's always been a lot of fun, and I've just been lucky.
Right. Well, yes. And we could talk about being lucky and how maybe you've created some of that luck for yourself, as well as taking advantage of the opportunities that came your way.
Yeah, yeah. I moved to Vancouver. I had never been there, and I didn't know a soul. So
That is a sense of adventure.
well, and also people say there's nepotism and there's all this sort of thing in business. I was able to get my career going from sort of 0 to 60 very quickly in a city I never had been to. I didn't know one soul. I had no business connections. I had nothing. So I think it's accessible to anybody. It's out there. We can do it. Anyone can do it. And it's not who you know or anything like that.
Right. And so, how did the journey? I mean, you've lived all over this country then. If have lived in Vancouver and now you're on the East Coast, what was the journey? I know you had the idea for Ethical Swag quite a number of years before you actually started to move forward with the company and founding and actually getting to work at it. What was that like?
So I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to have a business. I've dabbled in it a few times over the course of my career, but for me, it had to align with my values. It had to be very purposeful. It had to accomplish the goals that I had set out as a business. And to be completely honest, I had a difficult time finding a partner or partners that could see the vision that I had for how to develop a company. So I've had several starts into entrepreneurship over the course of my career. Um, Ethical swag is the one that I said, okay, let's really take all of the learnings that I've had over all of these years, and let's really action on them in a way that aligns with my heart and my head. And nobody could, God bless him, not even my husband can get into my head. So it was, it's a really hard thing to really articulate. It's getting easier now because of the success of ethical swag and our team and that sort of thing. But when it was just an idea in my head, I didn't even have the language for what I was trying to build, to be completely honest. And so that language has come, the actions have come, and it's a lot easier to talk about now. But I had all these things in my head that I really wanted to accomplish, that was around creating meaningful work, that was around hiring for talent, not location. So making sure that we make work accessible to people wherever they choose to live or however they choose to live. There was all these things in my head I didn't even know how to articulate, and I didn't know how to action on them, but I knew that I needed to. And that's kind of what ethical swag is. It's not really putting logos on pens. It's around sort of the governance structure, and it's around what we're trying to accomplish as a company. And that's what I'm loving.
I think that's so interesting because you have all these things that are sort of swirling around, and you have to find all the threads and figure out how you're going to pull them together and make that a part of what it is you're doing. And it feels like it's not only the swag portion and what you're actually selling, but then it's how you build the team and what the culture looks like and all the different pieces that go along with it.
100%. 100. Really, the business is the vehicle. It's our bus.
That's a great way of looking at it.
Right? It's how are we building that vehicle? What kind of seats are we putting in? What kind of engine are we putting into it? Where's the door going to be? Where's the windows going to be? How comfortable is it going to be for the people on the bus? It's just a vehicle for me. And originally, when I came up with the idea, I didn't know that I wanted to do it full time, to be completely honest, because part of me was like, oh, like the industry has a bad rap. Like, let's face it, right? And I was in that category as well. But what I saw was a disconnect between what people were saying about their brands and what they were putting their logos on.
Yes. And I feel like you were a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of like talking to companies about making the connection between that. Like, I feel like today, as we sit here in 2024, it's like, of course, people make that connection. But I mean, I don't know if it was so much like that when you got started.
No. I incorporated in 2010. I didn't actually give it my full-time effort until years later. But in 2010, when I came up with the idea, I came up with the name and I incorporated. And that was very serendipitous, I think, because the name is a little bit like Kleenex. You know, it's a fabulous name. I got the URL. I was able to get all the socials and all that sort of thing. And if it was years later, I don't know that we would have have been able to do that. But when I started and I was talking to people, I went to, back in 2010, I went to, it's called PPAI, which is an international promotional products show in Vegas. And I was talking to people and they're like, okay, so wait, can I get this? You're only going to sell sustainable products. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you're going to be out of business in a minute. Like, and they're like, so you won't sell everything.
Nice to meet you, but I won't see you here next year.
100%. The look of shock on their faces, they thought I had just flown in from Mars, honestly. It was not the talk at all. And I was like, no, that's what we're gonna do. And interestingly enough, the industry was not there at all back then.
Right. So even like in product selection or all of the things that you needed from others to put your business together was even just in the infancy of all of that.
Yeah, exactly. It was very early days. I'll tell you though, holy mac, it's come a long way in those years. I must say. And the supply chain is really starting to take notice. We've been really working hard. Like, we literally vote with our dollars. So if we can get an equivalent product, but the packaging from the supplier has a lot of, let's say pens, for example, they're not even thinking, right? Some pens, every single pen comes individually cello wrapped. And then others, you get a bag with 500 pens in it. And it's not affecting the quality of the decoration or anything like that. So when that sort of thing would happen, I would just say, okay, we're going to go to this supplier, not that supplier, because we don't want pens individually cello wrapped, period. And if we can't, and the more we grow, the louder our voice gets, the more that we can sort of impact some of those suppliers and their supply chains. And absolutely, thanks to sort of the awareness around sustainability, the suppliers are really waking up to it. And there's a lot more, those conversations are really, like, I get, oh, you're different. When I talk to suppliers a lot, they're like, oh, I've never had these conversations before. You're very, very different. And I'm like, but it's really important for us. And it should be important for you too. And we're looking to align with partners that are thinking about these things and are thinking about their packaging and thinking about where the products are coming from and that sort of thing. And it's been a really interesting journey. It really has.
It is. It's an interesting wave to ride from that infant, no one really was talking about it, to now having conversations, and there's so much awareness. So I think that's a really, timing, kind of an interesting piece. How did you decide to become a B Corp? Led you down that? What led you down that path? I mean, obviously fit with your sort of what you believe in and where you want to be in the world, but what made you actually go through the process of doing that?
Oh, it's hard too.
I know. That's why I'm curious.
Yeah, it's not easy. And part of it is that I there's so many certifications that you can buy. Honestly, we live in a world of fake news and, beautiful little crests on the bottom of your email signature and on your website that say that you're all that in a cup of tea, and actually you just bought it. And B Corp's not like that. And so that was one of the reasons I chose to go the B Corp route, because I was, we are a remote team. We're not physically anywhere. Our customers don't come through our doors. They don't get to meet us personally. We absolutely have phone, we have Zoom meetings, all that sort of thing with our customers all the time. But at the end of the day, this industry grew up around relationships. It's an industry where people largely work within a 40 kilometer or mile radius from their head office. And I was looking to build a company that was going to be North American wide. So I was like, relationships matter. They are important. I'm big on relationships. And we're not going to have those. So how do we build trust with our partners? How do they know that we are who we say we are? And the way to do that is third-party audits. The way to do that is to get certifications that you don't buy, but you earn. And so when I looked into it, I don't agree with everything of B Corp, honestly. I think they're an amazing, amazing organization, but we don't necessarily fit. They give lots of points if you have your customers really close to you. That's not our business model, right? And so it doesn't mean that we're any lesser of a company, as far as I'm concerned, but we lose points on that, for example. So it's not everything, but it is a third party accreditation from a very respected global organization called B Corporation that says to the world, okay, we've met a global standard on sustainability. And so that's why we did it, and that's why it was important to me.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And it does help open doors, I'm sure, when you go. And especially I think when you think of all the greenwashing and the people who say things and may have some of those badges you talk about, but it's not really at the heart of it, what you're trying to really get to, which is it's actually good for the earth, it's actually sustainable, all of those kinds of pieces.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you've talked about how your team has been sort of, geographically diverse from the beginning. How has that worked out for you?
Yeah, so every decision I made when I was doing the business, when I decided to go all in, when I decided that, this is going to be how we pay the mortgage and all that sort of thing, I was like, I had to get really, really focused. Okay, what does ethical mean? If I asked 10 people what ethical meant, I'd get 10 different definitions. And transparency is really important to me. It's the honesty and the trust. It's not being perfect. Because I think even as women, we hold ourselves back sometimes because we have such a high standard of it's got to be perfect before I get out there,
That is a
right?
fatal flaw for many of us.
I think it is, and I think it's why we aren't as sort of out. Like we want to know 95% before we go out, and a lot of our male counterparts are happy to know 20% and figure it out the rest of the way. And I think the answer is somewhere in the middle there. I think that we overcompensate and sometimes they're a little more bullish than maybe. Anyway, that's a different conversation for a different day. But yeah, so it was really important for me to define what does ethical mean? What do we stand for? Who are we? And all those kinds of things. And I spent a lot of time on that. And one of the big reasons why I started the company is because I wanted to be able to create meaningful employment. So I'm like, how do you do that? How do you accommodate for family situations? How do you accommodate for location? And I was like, we need to be completely virtual. So every software that I chose was very purposeful. How did it connect? How did we have, and I'm looking at it here, half a drawer, and that's our filing system in paper. We do not produce paper. We do not, like, every decision is how do we do it electronically. And so we have a team. We have two team members in Nairobi, very much members of our team. We sent them computers. They've got their ethical swag sweaters. They're very much part of our team. And when you ask them what makes ethical swag meaningful to you, it's the same kinds of things that you and I would say, right? And I want to be home for my family, so I'm choosing a career path that allows me to do that. I want to work a part of a team that is meaningful and that have my back, and that we're like a family, and we're looking out for each other, and we're doing something with a greater purpose. And so if you talk to a team member of mine in Nairobi or BC, in the woods, my operations manager lives literally in the woods. We ask her how the cougars and the bears are quite often. Um, they're We're actually very similar.
Yes. And now, how do you manage? So, I mean, thinking about the number of time zones just across Canada and having a team that's dispersed across them is one challenge. But then adding team members on other continents adds that many more layers. How do you manage those time differences?
So we make the work around it quite largely. We do have a couple of team members. One's in India and one's in Thailand, and they do work nights so that they can meet our time zone. Our colleagues in Nairobi, they work during their day, and they do things while we sleep. So when our production team comes in, they've got a queue ready to go and work, right?
So you're
And
finding ways to make it to your advantage.
100%. And a lot of our clients are in California and on the west coast of Canada. So our team members that are in Vancouver, then they're able to work on the west coast time zone, so that you don't have people working too late here. And so it just works. There's always ways to make things work if that's your intention, I believe.
Yes. If you decide there's a lot of reasons why something won't work, then it's probably not going to.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
so what happens if you decide it's going to work? It has to work. Then you make it work. You find ways that it will.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And so culture was something that was really important to you as you built that bus and decided, what color the seats were going to be in the exterior and all those fun things. And how did you build that culture? How do you feel like it was different, or where did you have advantages in having this dispersed team that you were building a great culture with?
It's interesting because it's changed so much since COVID, honestly. It really has. We're learning. We're absolutely learning. I'm learning that a lot of people that are attracted to at home work are introverts, which is really interesting. Didn't kind of, think about that, but learning that that's something. Learning how to communicate, learning how to, like, I think when we were talking earlier, you said when you walk into an office and you look at somebody in the eye, you kind of get a feel for how they're doing on that day. And you don't get that, right? And so I've chosen to live in a small place. So I've done the work from home thing a little bit more. But it's, I missed being a part of a team when I was doing that, even though, like, for years I worked as the only person in my location, and the rest of our office was in Halifax. And I found it lonely because there's a lot of things that happen around the cooler, the conversations that happen, and that sort of thing. So one of the things that I recognized, because I'm literally been collecting ideas over 30 years of what I wanted and what I didn't want. And so through my experience of being the only remote employee in an organization over several years, I realized how much I missed because I wasn't physically there. And so one of the things that I recognized was, unless everybody is remote, you're going to be left out.
Right. Yes, I think managing the hybrid workplace is definitely the most challenging as a leader.
Totally. Because it's nobody's fault. You start in a meeting and you have a conversation about something, and then all of a sudden the meeting takes a different turn. And all of a sudden now you've got another working group doing something else that's really exciting, and you're completely excluded. I remember at one point when I was in my old company, I heard about the fact that they were doing a regional development strategy. And I phoned up my boss. I'm like, who's on the subcommittee for the regional development committee? And he's like, oh, it's this person, this person. They were all in Halifax. I was the only regional person in the company. I was like, you didn't think to ask me to be on the regional development subcommittee? Like, it's hilarious. But out of sight, out of mind. Everybody's in it. It's not their fault. They're great people. But I was like, oh, wow. So for me, everybody's remote, but we do have, like, we give opportunities. If we say, if you think that you'll thrive better in a co-working environment, we'll pay for you to work in, like, a WeWork or in one of those.
Some kind of community office space.
Exactly. So we're not saying you have to be at home, because also when my children were younger, I didn't have a dedicated office like I have now. It would have been a lot harder for me to work from home.
Someone's bedroom, so I can relate to that.
Right?
Yeah.
So we have to recognize that too when we're talking about remote work, and when we're talking about allowing people to show up to work in the way that fits with their lives. Right? And so we're open to all of that, and we're working it out as we go, and everybody has a voice. And we have an office here, but nobody goes to it because everybody likes working from home. And then we have an employee in Vancouver that is in a co-working space and loves it. And so I think the point is, what's right for you? What's right for me? It's not the same.
No, and you have the automatic baseline of you are going to be remote. We are not,
Yes.
chances are you're not hiring locally. So therefore, how do you want to work?
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
It's a great baseline to sort of leap off from in terms of finding out how they want to work, because you aren't invested in that, really. I mean, it's like you have no impetus to be like, well, I really want you in the office, but they're just they're not close. So it takes away a certain amount of expectation and puts you in a, like, let's work together to figure this out kind of frame.
And it's amazing. Technology today really allows for this, honestly. It was always my dream to do this, but technology has caught up with my dream. So it's actually quite simple. We have Slack. We use Slack as you're walking down the hall, you've got a comment. But if you are going back to find that information again sometime, don't put it in Slack, right? So that's sort of our baseline for Slack. It's literally, you're in the same office. It's like, hey, do you have a pen? Hey, I don't understand this question from this client. Can you chime in? We have the different channels. It works really well. But anything that we're going to want to refer to later, we don't put in Slack, right? So we have certain communications parameters around our different sort of ways that we communicate. And it works. And when it doesn't, we get together and say, okay, that we dropped the ball on that one. Oops, we lost that, or that got lost, or we forgot about this. How do we kind of collectively solve for it? And we do. And it's building and it's growing. And my gosh, we've got it dialed in now. I'll tell you, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and I think that speaks to how you've sort of enabled communication. So both from a technology perspective, but also from sort of a process perspective around what's working, what's not working, and what do we need to work in our best state possible.
One of my biggest worries, honestly, as we onboard new people and that sort of thing, just because we're doing it this way doesn't mean that we're always going to do it this way. There's a tendency when you come into a company, it's like, oh, this doesn't really make a lot of sense, but this is the way they do it. And somebody will keep doing it that way. And then that sort of perpetuates over time and becomes like, why are we even doing this? Like, I don't understand. And so one of the things from a cultural standpoint, we're always like, if you think there's a better way. And so everybody on the team's empowered to put their hand up. There's never bad suggestions. I love the way the team is developing to really have each other's backs, to embrace suggestions from other people. It's interesting. It's really interesting how it's evolving.
It is interesting. And I think, technology is evolving so fast as well that, like you said, technology's caught up to your dream. But, what happens when it even sort of surpasses what you imagined in terms of ways you can work together? Because I think, in the next decade, we're going to see even more change, and it'll open possibilities and efficiencies that we probably don't even imagine right now.
100%. We are in a time that we haven't seen in a long, long time. So there was a convergence of technologies sort of back in the early 1900s between telephone and cars. So communication, robotics, right? That really took us from one place in our evolution to another, from a communications and industrialization and all that sort of thing. We're kind of at another point like that in our world around AI, robotics. There's a convergence of technologies that are happening right now, and I don't think any of us can really get our heads wrapped around what it's going to look like in 10 years. But what it's doing for me is to say, how can we be really purposeful with all of this converging technology in a way that we don't repeat some of the mistakes we made last time? Because we made a lot of mistakes. And so if you think of, robotics and driverless cars and AI and technology and all the things that are going on right now, let's just not do repeat of what we've done. How can we be really purposeful and thoughtful about, because I just think that we've sort of let ourselves down in a lot of ways. Our families. I use this line quite often, but when I was growing up, a barber with 7 kids could afford to buy a house. And that's gone. Our kids, and I would suggest, my kids would be coming from a place of privilege, and so would yours. And in terms of where we are today, they can't afford to buy houses. And how is that even something that's happening in today's society? So how do we now address and harness the power of what's going on from a technology standpoint to fix some of the things we got wrong last time and create a better world? And that's really, I think, where my brain is. I think that the ethical swag is a vehicle for change. It's not about putting logos on pens. If you're going to be buying pens with logos, let's support companies and supply chains and people to help to create that other world that I'm talking about. And if all of us do that and we harness our purchasing power and we're thoughtful about where our money's going and how we're doing it, I think that we can take the best of what we've got and throw away some of the things we got wrong over the last few years.
Mm-hmm. I think it also opens the door for new players, inventive ideas, those kinds of small, ideas, things that start small and can grow and come into play and be important. Right. I think about that on the sustainability or just like from an entrepreneurial perspective, somebody who has an idea and wants to start a business and, how then that can play into how we create that better world and how they get opportunities to break into, the establishment, so to speak.
Yeah. And that's what we need to do. We need to break into the establishment. And the way to do that is with for-profit, powerful companies. Fight fire with fire. Right? We can't be social enterprises and we can't be meek and mild about, profitability. The way to really get that attention is to have for-profit companies, but do it with purpose.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's, often a conflicted place. Like we're promoting, eco-friendly, sustainable, all of those different pieces. And then it's like, and we don't, take a salary or a profit and that those two things often are, like a little dirty when they're coupled together, sort of viewed that way, right? And so how do we, like, it's okay to do things that are good for the earth in a business practice that, builds great culture and great companies and make money doing it. That is okay.
100%. 100%.
And the companies actually that are making money and get bigger have the influence or the clout to actually make change.
Exactly. Exactly. And I find that we're in a world, this cancel culture, and if you don't have everything perfect, we're going to sort of marginalize you. Like progress over perfection. Get something right and then work on something else. Like, the Apple commercial Mother Nature, they did like a 4-minute short on Mother Nature. I don't know if you saw that. And I was like, okay, they're doing a lot of great things. And then people criticized me for saying they were doing great things. Oh, but they're not doing very well over here. And I'm like, can we not just celebrate something that's good? Like, it's like, yeah, but when somebody's doing, and there are times where people do it as a marketing thing and it needs to be real. I'm not saying that, but there's organizations that are doing a really, really good job around sustainability and the environment, but they still have a long way to go on their workforce culture and their diversity and inclusion and that sort of thing, right? So they might be doing really well on the environmental side, but not so well on the DEI side. So do we say you're bad? Or do we say, great work? Now,
how can you use that to influence the places where you need to do work?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and there is the, it's the carrot and the big stick kind of, right? Like what, the mentality of like, well, if it's not perfect, but then how do we make progress and how do we acknowledge that people are trying to make progress, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I think I think it will be very interesting to see, how things unfold and where we end up in the next while. So what's next for Ethical Swag? What's next for you on your path to world domination?
So still a lot of work to do to get Ethical Swag sort of to the next level, so that it's really, because we're really just like COVID was an interesting time, right? I made it my full-time focus only in the late 2017. So I incorporated in 2010, but kept my corporate job right through because I had young kids and I had geez, I had parents with a house burned down. I had a lot of personal stuff going on. And I also know what it's like to be an entrepreneur and how it's all consuming. And so it was only in 2017, late 2017, that I said, okay, I'm going to go all in on this. And then COVID hit in 2020. So we've got a phenomenal company, a phenomenal foundation. I've got another year or two of really reinforcing that, so that it's a strong, stable, sustainable company. For me, it's the vehicle, as we've talked about many times in this podcast. So what's really interesting to me, I feel like even in our business schools, we're teaching the wrong things. I feel that in the incubators with startups, we're saying grow fast at any cost. There's this mentality that I've witnessed over my 30 plus year career that I think we need to change. So for me, and for what's next, is really get ethical swag sort of soaring with the eagles. So that then we can start to say, how do we do this at scale with startups? And how do we build in, because there's a lot of companies that become very successful and say, oh, wait, that wasn't so good. I'm going to now give back. It's sort of I'm a politician, so I'm going to be a little slimy to get in, but then I'll be good when I'm there. And it never happens. So for me, it's how do we bake in sort of these principles at the get-go and make it less difficult to do it, because it is hard.
Yes. Well, and it's sort of this idea of like, if you can build the solid base and the foundation in the right way, it's going to turn into this springboard that you can then use to scale up the business quickly and, without a lot of bumps. Not that there will be none, because I know entrepreneurship, but that the path forward will be smoother, and you can use that springboard to really lever yourself forward.
100%. Yeah. I look at business. There's phases that we go through as entrepreneurs, and you would know this as an entrepreneur, right? And so you go through growth phase, and you go through, these phases, and then you hit what I call a black hole. And that black hole is where you have to invest in your processes and in your systems, and it feels like you're not getting anywhere, and it's like painful because you're spending a lot of money and you're not seeing the corresponding growth, right?
Yes. Often you need to invest in people as well in those black holes. You need the expertise to come so that the revenue will follow. But it's always a moment when you're spending all this money and you're not sure, when the tap will open in terms of the revenue coming.
Yeah. I'm looking at you. You're such an entrepreneur, and you're like, oh, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, right?
I have some stars I could show you. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs give up in the black holes because they don't see the other side. It's like, oh, why am I doing this? It was easier back there when I had lower revenues and I didn't have as many people and I didn't have as many problems.
Yep, it's true. And honestly, I feel like that kind of is why I do this, why I am doing this work, is because we need to build community around ourselves. So when we're in the black hole, we have the supports as entrepreneurs to be like, whoo, I'm feeling, really off kilter here. How did you get through this? Or what was it like for you? Or do you have any ideas for me about where I could go next? Because otherwise it's a very dark and lonely place.
Oh, it's hard. It's hard because it's, if we use the analogy of building, you're down, you're digging the foundation in those black holes. The stories go on really quickly if you build a proper foundation. And if you don't invest in the black holes, you can't put stories on your building. You're building on stilts, right? And I've had a friend who's an entrepreneur, and she was in a black hole, and she's like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I'm like, I know exactly where you are, because she's an engineer and an architect, not necessarily a business person. I come at things from a business perspective because I've got over 30 years in business, and I'm like, no, don't give up. You're in a black hole. This is how, to define it. This is what you're doing. This is why you're doing this. This is why this was like this then. And this is where you're going. And she's on the other side of it now. And she's like, oh my God, this is amazing. But she almost gave up in the black hole because it was just treachery. So I agree with you. And it's how do we teach those things, and how do we help companies kind of get through them and give them the supports and that sort of thing. And that's kind of the next chapter for me, honestly.
Well, I think that's really exciting, and I am looking forward to seeing where that next chapter takes you. So, I want to thank you for coming and chatting with me today. It's been really interesting, and I'm very excited to see what direction you take next, and what is next for you and Ethical Swag.
I sincerely appreciate your interest in what we're doing. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you won't miss any episodes. Figure 8 isn't just a podcast. It's a way of seeing the big, gorgeous goals of women entrepreneurs coming to life. If you're interested in learning more, you can find my book, Big Gorgeous Goals, on Amazon anywhere you might live. For more about my growth and leadership training programs, visit www.julieellis.ca to see how we might work together. Read my blog or sign up to get your free diagnostic. Are you ready for growth? Once again, that's www.julieellis.ca. When we work together, we all win. See you again soon for another episode of Figure 8.